In this video, we'll be taking a look at 6 NBA matchups, and I'll break them all down with free winning picks so you can bet smarter and win bigger. But first, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell so you get our picks the second they drop. Because when the lines move, the early birds cash in. And if you want the full Winning Sport Picks experience, head over to wspicks.com and check out our VIP packages, or grab a free consultation with one of our professional sports consultants for the sharpest edge you'll find anywhere. That's where the real plays live. We are your bookmaker's worst nightmare. These are the games we're hammering, the ones the books can't afford you to bet. This is Winning Sport Picks. The free picks are about to drop, and they're coming in hot. Washington versus Philadelphia gives us one of those lopsided boards where the number looks inflated for a reason, because Washington catching 13.5 has struggled to generate possessions that convert into meaningful runs, while Philadelphia laying 13.5 thrives when they can build early separation and force the opponent into predictable half-court sets. These types of mismatches usually come down to who dictates tempo. If Philadelphia sets the tone defensively, Washington becomes overly reliant on slow trips that give the Sixers the edge in efficiency. And that's where big spreads actually become justified instead of dangerous. With a total sitting around 235.5, the market is expecting a steady offensive pace without either side needing extreme shot making, and that leans toward a game where Philadelphia's consistency drives the rhythm. I like Philadelphia to cover the 13.5, and I like the game to go over the 235.5. Portland versus Toronto sets up a cleaner, more competitive board, with Portland catching 5.5 and Toronto laying 5. And what stands out is that both teams profile as streaky in opposite ways. Portland plays better when they can turn the game into extended spurts, while Toronto is strongest when they grind pace to a controlled mid-tempo and force mistakes over full quarters. In games with spreads this tight, the key is usually which side generates the more reliable shot volume late, and Toronto at home, with that slight edge in defensive cohesion, fits the model of a team that pulls away in the final 6 minutes. With the total hanging around 231.5, books are projecting steady scoring but not a track meet, so possessions matter more, and that tends to favor the more disciplined side. I like Toronto to cover the 5, and I like the game to stay under the 231.5. New York versus Boston is one of those classic coin flip boards disguised as a near pick'em, with New York laying 1.5 and Boston catching 1.5, and this comes down to which team handles physicality better across 4 quarters. New York tends to thrive when they can impose a grinding pace that forces opponents into tougher looks, while Boston often excels when they create early rhythm and push opponents into recovery mode defensively. In near pick'em spots, you look for the team more likely to control the rebounding and the mid-range possessions, and New York usually brings more consistency in those areas when the line is close. The total around 229.5 suggests moderate scoring with potential late-game volatility, but not enough to expect an extreme pace shift. I like New York to cover the 1.5, and I like the game to go under the 229.5. Minnesota versus New Orleans brings us our second big number of the slate, with Minnesota laying 8.5 and New Orleans catching 9.5, depending on the best line available. Minnesota is built to dominate defensively when they're fully locked in, and that typically leads to long scoring droughts for opponents who rely on rhythm. New Orleans catching a big number means the market doesn't trust them to sustain offense for full stretches, and that's where big spreads become less about talent and more about control. With the total around 232, the expectation is a steady but not frantic scoring pace, leaning more toward Minnesota shaping the game with their preferred tempo. I like Minnesota to cover the 8.5, and I like the game to stay under the 232. Memphis versus San Antonio is the kind of matchup where the number tells you everything. Memphis catching 5.5 and San Antonio laying 5 points signals the books expect San Antonio to generate steadier offensive production across 4 quarters. Memphis tends to rely heavily on momentum swings, and when those aren't present, their scoring consistency becomes shaky. San Antonio laying 5 fits the profile of a team more likely to control spacing, possession structure, and late-game execution. The total around 230.5 hints at a moderate scoring environment without a runaway pace. I like San Antonio to cover the 5, and I like the game to stay under the 230. Oklahoma City versus Golden State is a fascinating line because OKC laying 11.5 and Golden State catching 12.5 shows how the market views the gap in consistency between these teams. Oklahoma City thrives when they control tempo early and force opponents to play catch up, while Golden State catching double digits means the books simply don't trust their ability to maintain scoring efficiency over full quarters. Blowout range spreads usually come down to defensive control, and Oklahoma City brings the profile of a team that dictates matchups rather than reacting to them. With the total around 220.5, scoring should be steady but not explosive, and that tends to support a structured favorite. I like Oklahoma City to cover the 11.5, and I like the game to go under the 220.5. Now listen to me, those are the free picks, but the one game I am unloading on tonight, the game that's going to crush your bookie's soul, that's the VIP play of the day at WSPicks.com. This is the nuke, the hammer, the max bet, the one play I've circled, the game that will bury your bookmaker 6 feet under. When it hits, and it will, your bookie is going to need a doctor, a lawyer, and maybe even a priest. If you want to ride with me on the biggest bet of the day, get to WSPicks.com right now. For the recap, I'm rolling with Philadelphia minus 13.5 and the over in that matchup, Toronto minus 5 and the under, New York minus 1.5 and the under, Minnesota minus 8.5 and the under, San Antonio minus 5 and the under, and Oklahoma City minus 11.5 with the under in that final matchup. A full slate built on pace control, defensive edges, and matchup-driven value. This is Winning Sport Picks, where we don't just bet, we bury bookmakers. Smash that subscribe button, drop your favorite plays in the comments, and hammer that like button like you're hammering your bookie into the dirt. We're cashing, we're dominating, and tonight we're dancing on the grave of your bookmaker. Let's go!